While preparing a birthday cake for her husband at home, a woman shockingly notices pages of a book on the table flipping on their own. Driven by curiosity, she spots an unexpectedly open window. Hesitating for a moment, she decides to close it. At that moment, she discovers a series of footprints on the floor, sending chills down her spine. Suddenly, a masked man bursts into her home. In panic, she calls for her daughter to come downstairs, only to find, to her horror, another masked man in her daughter's room, who quickly seizes the girl. The mother rushes to the kitchen to call the police, but one of the intruders threatens her daughter's life, coercing her to abandon the call. He claims they'll be unharmed if she complies with their demands. The assailant then leads her upstairs to open the safe, while his accomplices guard her daughter downstairs. Meanwhile, one of the intruders harbors a malicious intent towards the girl, but is stopped by another. Seizing the moment, the girl grabs a nearby knife and slashes the face of one of the assailants. The pain causes him to remove his mask. Just then, the ringleader arrives with the woman of the house. Seeing the intruder's unmasked face, she realizes they won't let her and her daughter go easily. She grabs a pot of boiling water from the table and throws it at the intruder, urging her daughter to escape quickly. Suddenly, the situation escalates with 2 gunshots. At the same time, the woman's husband, Paul, is performing surgery at a hospital. He hears an announcement about 2 emergency patients whose conditions eerily resemble those of his wife and daughter. Struck with a foreboding feeling, Paul rushes to the emergency room. Paul's colleague delivers the devastating news. His daughter is in a coma, with uncertainty looming over her awakening, and his wife is gone forever. Overwhelmed by grief, Paul becomes despondent, with his only interest lying in whether the culprits have been caught. He visits the police station to inquire about the case progress, only to learn of no advancements. The chief's attempts to instill confidence in the police work only deepens Paul's despair, especially upon seeing a wall covered with unsolved cases. On his way home, Paul encounters 2 thugs bullying a girl. He steps in to intervene, but ends up being brutally beaten by the thugs. This incident makes Paul realize the need for a weapon to protect himself. When he visits a gun shop intending to purchase firearms, he notices the surveillance camera pointed at him. The clerk informs him of the need to fill out a gun application, but Paul, unwilling to leave a trace, concocts an excuse and leaves the shop. One evening at the hospital, a gunshot victim is brought in. During the emergency treatment, the patient's gun falls to the floor. Paul, seeing this, discreetly kicks the gun under the operating table and later sneaks it away unnoticed. Now armed, Paul spends his days healing the sick at the hospital and his nights online, mastering the use of firearms. However, his daughter suffers another epileptic seizure, worsening her condition. Watching his daughter lying unconscious and the culprits still at large, Paul's suppressed anger is ignited. Determined to dispense justice himself, he takes up arms and patrols the streets, looking to aid those in need. Soon, he witnesses a couple being violently attacked. Bravely, Paul intervenes, but the assailant doesn't hesitate to shoot at him and even tries to run him over. Paul swiftly retaliates. Faced with the barely alive assailant, Paul decisively fires a fatal shot. When the police arrive, they deduce from a video provided by a witness that the shooter might be inexperienced. This footage goes viral online, and upon seeing the video, Paul feels a sense of heroic pride. The next day, Paul returned to work at the hospital. This time, he encountered a young boy who had been injured. Upon inquiry, he learned that the boy had been hurt by a thug selling ice cream, who threatened that if the boy didn't obey, next time, it wouldn't just be a leg injury. This news reignited Paul's anger. He put on a hoodie and took to the streets again, while the thugs remained unaware of the trouble they were about to face. Soon after, the police arrive at the crime scene. Based on eyewitness descriptions and video comparisons, they deduce the assailant is left-handed, stirring significant public debate. Amidst this controversy, Paul remains indifferent. On this day, Paul is still treating patients in the emergency room when he surprisingly discovers that one of the injured is wearing the same watch. That watch had been stolen from his wife on the day she was attacked. Paul takes the patient's phone, while no one is watching, and uses the patient's fingerprint to unlock it. After retrieving his watch, he returns to his office. Opening the phone, he finds his home address inside, indicating that everything is premeditated. Following the address on a business card, Paul locates the shady store. However, the store owner guesses Paul's identity from their conversation and secretly sends a message to the criminal, Fish. Pretending to look for something, the store owner prepares to grab a weapon, but Paul sees this in the mirror and subdues him in time. Just as Paul is about to interrogate him about the other criminals, Fish arrives at the scene. Fortunately, Paul notices Fish's arrival through the surveillance and avoids his attack in time. Paul stood up to retaliate, but his gun malfunctioned due to a jammed cartridge. Seizing this opportunity, Fish launches a fierce attack on Paul. At a critical moment, Fish accidentally slips, and Paul quickly grabs a guitar and strikes him hard in the face. Paul then forcefully steps on Fish's wound. Under this pressure, Fish reveals information about another accomplice and mentions that specific details are in his phone. As Paul is about to pick up the phone, Fish suddenly counterattacks, pulling out a gun from his sock to attack Paul again. Just then, a bowling ball unexpectedly hits Fish. Paul takes his phone and retrieves the store's surveillance footage. However, his ring accidentally falls off and is left at the scene. The next day, the police knock on Paul's door, showing him a photo of Fish and the ring that had fallen at the crime scene. Paul feels uneasy, but the police inform him of new developments in his wife's case and urge him to keep faith in the police. They then leave. Immediately after, Paul destroys the criminal's phone, gets dressed in his action gear, and heads to the territory of another accomplice. After confirming his identity, Paul strikes him with a wrench. When the criminal regains consciousness, he finds himself tied up. Paul, seeking information on the last accomplice, resorts to intense interrogation. Under unbearable pain, the criminal finally reveals the name of the last accomplice, Knox. Hearing this, Paul immediately leaves, but the criminal asks if he plans to kill him. Paul replies, no, but the Jack will. Afterwards, Paul returns to the hospital, contemplating how to find Knox. Unexpectedly, Knox himself initiates a phone call. They agree on a meeting place. Paul arrives at the designated location and calls Knox, only to hear the ringtone coming from a restroom nearby. Paul fires his gun impulsively, but when he kicks open the door, he realizes he's walked into a trap. At that moment, Knox attacks Paul from behind. Paul reacts quickly, shooting out the overhead light, and uses the darkness to escape. Meanwhile, the police receive a call from a witness, claiming to have clearly seen the gunman's face. The chief quickly arrives at the hospital and is surprised to find that the person who called is Knox. After treating his own wounds, Paul hurries back home and finds his brother Frank waiting for him. Frank has guessed that he is the mysterious gunman, leading to a heated argument between the brothers. Frank doesn't want to see his brother in danger again. While they are arguing, the chief of police suddenly appears at the door. Frank quickly helps his brother handle the situation. After the chief leaves, Paul receives a call from the hospital. His daughter Jordan has miraculously woken up. Paul and Frank hurried to the hospital. Jordan has just woken up, but must now face the cruel reality of losing her mother. A few days later, Jordan is discharged from the hospital, but as they take the elevator, Knox suddenly appears. Paul realizes that Knox won't let them go easily. He decides to go to a weapon store and buys some powerful firearms. Sure enough, that very night, Knox and others quietly sneak into Paul's house. Paul tells his daughter to hide in the stairwell, blocking it with a cabinet. A killer shoots wildly at the bed, but after lifting the blanket, finds it empty. Just as he's about to leave the room, Paul shoots him in the head. Another killer, hearing the noise, rushes in and is shot dead by Paul. Then, Paul hears a noise and slowly heads to the basement, where Knox, hidden in the shadows, ambushes him. At this moment, Paul's daughter, sensing something wrong, cries out for help. Attracted by her cries, Knox is distracted, allowing Paul to kick open a drawer, grab a rifle, and kill the boastful villain. After Paul eliminates all the criminals, the police finally arrive. The chief, though aware of Paul's identity as the mysterious gunman, ultimately decides to cover for him. The case is closed as follows. Paul's daughter is discharged from the hospital. Knox, fearing she would identify him, attempts to kill her to silence her. Paul, to protect his family, buys firearms for self-defense. Knox walks into Paul's line of fire and gets what he deserves. The film ends with these words, offering a thrilling depiction of vigilante justice, though such violence is not advisable. This film, not overshadowed by political correctness, invites thoughts about a surgeon who saves lives by day and the world by night. If you have any thoughts, feel free to leave a comment and share. This is a fantastic revenge action film. For those who like it, consider watching the original movie for more details to savor. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please remember to subscribe to my channel for more exciting movie shares.